Okay, so we're still in chapter 6, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at a section that begins maybe here, and we're going to look more at character motivation. So I'm going to read this very kind of quickly, and then toward the end we'll do some annotations. So in your books, this is probably around pages 86 through 87. Okay. The door of the shed opened. An old man appeared. His mustache was covered in ice. His lips were blue. It was Rabbi Elliahou, who had headed a small congregation in Poland. A very kind man, beloved by everyone in the camp, even by the capos and the block stead. Despite the ordeals and deprivations, his face continued to radiate his innocence, right? He was the only rabbi whom nobody ever failed to address as rabbi in Buna, meaning everybody called him a rabbi. He looked like one of those prophets of old, always in the midst of his people when they needed to be consoled. So he's very helpful, right? Always ready to help people when they needed to be consoled or a little bit of help. And strangely, his words never provoked anyone. They did bring peace. As he entered the shed, his eyes, brighter than ever, seemed to be searching for someone. Perhaps someone here has seen my son? He had lost his son in the commotion. He had searched for him among the dying to no avail. Then he had dug through the snow to find his body in vain, meaning he did not find it. For 3 years, they stayed close to each other. Side by side, they had endured the suffering, the blows. They had waited for the ration of bread, and they had prayed. 3 years from camp to camp, from selection to selection. And now, when the end seemed near, fate had separated them. Right? And so for me, I automatically think of Ellie and his father, of their relationship, right? So for many years, they had side by side, they had endured suffering, blows, rations of bread, they've prayed, they've gone from camps to camp, selection to selection. And so their relationship seems kind of similar to Rabbi Elliahou and his son. When he came near me, Rabbi Elliahou whispered, "It happened on the road." So here's a little bit of a vignette, like a short story. It happened on the road. We lost sight of one another during the journey. I fell behind a little at the end of the column. I didn't have the strength to run anymore, and my son didn't notice. That's all I know. Where has he disappeared? Where can I find him? Perhaps you've seen him somewhere. Right? So he's looking for his son. He says we got separated, right? They got separated. And he maybe fell behind and the son didn't notice. And so Eliza responds, "No, Rabbi Elliahou, I haven't seen him." And so he left as he had come, a shadow swept away by the wind. Love that figurative language. I think that's beautiful. He had already gone through the door when I remembered that I had noticed his son running beside me. I had forgotten and so had not mentioned it to Rabbi Elliahou. So this was like an honest mistake, it seems, right? He at first didn't know, and then later he remembered, right? Sometimes that happens. But then I remembered something else. His son, notice the italicized, his son had seen him losing ground. So his son did notice, right? Which makes this a misunderstanding. His son had seen him losing ground, sliding back to the rear of the column. He had seen him. Again, that repetition, he had seen him. And he continued to run in front, letting the distance between them become greater. And a terrible thought crossed my mind. What if he had wanted to be rid of his father? He had felt his father growing weaker, and believing that the end was near, he thought by this separation to free himself of a burden that could diminish his own chance for survival. Meaning, if he frees himself of the burden that is caring for his father, he might have a better chance of survival. It was good that I had forgotten all that. And I was glad that Rabbi Elliahou continued to search for his beloved son. And in spite of myself, a prayer formed inside me, a prayer to this God in whom I no longer believed, right? So we're seeing again this kind of loss of faith. But then at the same time, amidst this loss of faith, he still finds it important to say a prayer, right? So here's his prayer. Oh God, Master of the universe, give me strength never to do what Rabbi Eliahou's son has done. And so my question is, what do you think will happen between Eli and his father? Will both Eli and his father survive? This is maybe also a warning that that Eli is kind of taking and heeding. And maybe even though people in the town did not listen to Moishe the beetle and did not listen to Madame Shaster, maybe he will listen and learn from what Rabbi Eliahou's son has done, and maybe in turn to do the opposite.